Hi, I'm Peter Capaldi. I play the Doctor, and you're watching EMS Productions.
Hello everyone, welcome back to this week's Doctor Who review video, where today I'll be looking at the rather complicated Before the Flood. So we get to Before the Flood, obviously off the cliffhanger, or the underwater base setting, and the cliffhanger of Under the Lake, where we had the Doctor become a ghost, supposedly dead. Obviously I criticised that cliffhanger last week, so I'll sort of forget about that now. But it's made easier for myself by the fact that this episode doesn't really continue from the cliffhanger at all, does it? We start off with that unique, completely different from anything we've ever had before opening sequence, with the Doctor breaking the fourth wall, which I don't think we ever had before in Doctor Who. Fairly certain we haven't, 95% sure that we haven't. Let me know if I'm making a mistake, but yeah, I don't think so. So that was a nice little experiment there, doing something different for once, and clearly, well, it was kind of like explaining one of the main parts of the plot that we'd need to understand later on in the episode. So they decided to use the opening sequence to just sort of poke us with it and say, oh yeah, you know that bootstrap paradox thing? Yeah, we're just going to give you a little explanation for that so that you actually know what's going on later in the episode. So I thought that was a nice way of doing it, because clearly this is a complicated episode with a fairly complex resolution, explanation and things. So to use that sort of opening sequence to have the Doctor explaining that to us, and with the Beethoven analogy and this kind of stuff as well, and sort of example, if you like, not analogy really, example of this time traveller, it's obviously not the Doctor who went back in time and all this kind of thing. Well, you've seen it before, so I won't explain the whole thing, but and it's just a nice little fairly simple explanation of the bootstrap paradox, which obviously it's an interesting concept. I finally understand it fully because I'm a bit of an idiot, so I hadn't really understood it fully until this episode, until I watched it this time, where I finally understand the whole plot pretty much. So I'll try and clear that up as I'm working my way through the episode, but I'm pretty much sure of the explanations for everything and how it all works now, I think. Well, we'll find out as we go through. But yeah, so that was really a different way of doing it from Toby Whithouse, taking a few, being experimental. Like this whole series really has been experimental. Obviously the one major thing that I was disappointed they didn't experiment with was not sticking with the widescreen format, or whatever you want, with the cinema style widescreen with cutting off the top and the bottom like they have for the trailers. That's the only thing that they could have experimented with and didn't, which I think they should have done after the trailers. But I'll let them off with that because it was such a great series. But this episode, you've got that interesting opening sequence, very unique and different, and then we get to the Doctor's guitar. He appears the first time we get to see it. Actually, no, it's not the first time. Ignore that last comment. The second time we get to see it, after the tank in The Magician's Apprentice, where he just feels like having a little bit of a rock out on the guitar, obviously playing a bit of Beethoven's Fifth to link it all in together. And we get that fantastic rock Doctor Who theme, if you want to call it. I don't know, I haven't got the best name for it, but let's call it a sort of guitar-y or rock Doctor Who theme, which I think sounds really, really great. And, well, they've got to put it on the soundtrack, but really they should have just stuck with that for the rest of the episodes, because it definitely, for me, I think it does. The current series, the Capaldi Doctor Who theme tune doesn't sound particularly great to me. I prefer it to the initial Matt Smith one for like his first two series, but then the like 7B theme and the one used around day and time, I prefer a lot to the 2010 to 12 version and the 2014/15 version, which is just a bit screamy, a bit screechy. I just don't really like it that much. My favourite, well, of the new, it's going a bit off, but why not? Let's talk about Doctor Who theme tunes, because that's a bit of a musical topic, as my channel's relevant to that. And got a lot of the Doctor Who theme, so, but my favourite from New Who is the 2008 version, so the Series 4, well, so, of the like main versions that have been used in lots of episodes, the Series 4 / the Specials version, which is kind of a rehash of the Series 1, but I think it actually came in the Voyage of the Damned the first time. It's kind of a rehash of the first three series ones, but it's got more of a bass to it, more of a beat, more sort of drums in the background. It just makes it sound more epic and more sort of serious, exciting and stuff. So I do really, really like the Series 1 to 3 version. It is sort of, it's a classic now. It's sort of nostalgic, that, even though it feels also, it's still sort of new, still it's new, but it's actually really quite old now. It's 11 years old from my point of view in 2 days' time. So there you go, that's when I filmed it, a little hint here to when I filmed this. But yeah, so it's nearly 11 years old and it does still sound a really nice, so it's a really nice theme and it just sort of, it's the classic one. I think even now they probably still use that with, if you like, sort of have general events and stuff relating to Doctor Who that's not too sort of really Doctor Who sort of sci-fi conventions, this kind of stuff, and they'll probably use that theme most of the time just because it's the most well-known theme, I'd say, from the new series. It's that original version, or the Series 4 version, of course, so I love that. And in terms of classic Who theme tunes, of course, the 1960s ones are very nice, but my personal favourite is the, well, 1970s one. The sort of, what started with John Pertwee and then ran through basically the whole of the 70s, up until we get the screechy version that's on all the classic DVDs, that version. It's alright, but my favourite one is definitely that one, which I use a part of for the intro of this video, of course. I use that for it, and that's the Ambassador of Death. It's a unique one, but that style and that overall theme is my favourite from the show, and I think, well, probably is my favourite overall, even edging the 2008 version. And also, shout out for an underrated theme tune. Check out, if you haven't heard it, Trial of a Time Lord theme. It's very different, it's very 80s, but I just have a soft spot for it. It just sounds, I just love it for some reason. It just sounds great. It's so completely, it's really different and very sort of 80s electronic-y kind of music. But I really like it, and so it's hard to pinpoint exactly why, but it's just that sounds great. I might play it right now actually, you might be hearing it, you never know, if I've done my editing right. But yeah, if you haven't, then go check it out, because it is, I think it's either the 1986 theme or Trial of Time Lord theme. Pick either, you should be able to find it that way. And yeah, it sounds great, so for some reason. So I've probably put that in my like top 3 or 4 of my favourite theme tunes, just slightly random, but there you go. So yeah, and the rock theme is better than the one they used currently, and I would have preferred if they stuck with it, but that wasn't really going to happen, was it? It was meant to be a unique one-off thing, so it's a little bit disappointing. But it was a nice moment for this episode, and nice sort of finishing off that unique intro. And one other thing, of course, I should mention is the Clockwork Squirrel sitting on the amp from Magpies, aka the Idiot's Lantern, the electric shop or TV shop and stuff in there, the amp's from there, and he's got his Clockwork Squirrel that he made, taking apart the radio and stuff. It's all these just little references to previous episodes and moments that I like, that sort of thing. It's not too over the top, it doesn't need to be involved. You'll notice it if you're a big fan, it doesn't matter if you're not, it doesn't make any difference. But it's a nice little nod, so that's the sort of references that I like. And it sets up the story nicely for what's to come. Well, after the opening sequence, we get the fangirling O'Donnell, who starts screaming about it's a time machine and all this kind of stuff. It's bigger on the inside, that's the one, sorry, getting confused. It's bigger on the inside, and yeah, she's a nice character. She's quite nice, I think. Yeah, she's slightly sad to see her die, but we'll come to that in a minute. And we get good old Alba Prentice, the slightly strange, campy character from Tivoli, the Tivolian, and the Girl Complex, as I mentioned last week. And well, he's interesting character, isn't he? He seems to sort of, when he goes over to the Doctor and says, I have lots of like items you can use to oppress me with. Slightly, I won't say the words, but I think we know what quite a few people were thinking at that point when with the tone of his voice and the interesting way that the words that he used may have suggested he likes a certain kind of thing. But I won't go into that because, well, we've got to keep this civilised and U-rated and all this kind of stuff. So I won't go any further. But yeah, he's a rubbish alien, really, as Bennett says. My first proper alien, and he's an idiot. And that pretty much sums him up. He's an idiot. But he dies. We don't really care. It's all just a further plot. But it's nice to sort of have those references back to previous episodes. And of course, you had the reference to the Arctelians from the Torchwood episode, Greeks Bearing Gifts. Not a particularly great episode from Series 1, middle of it. It's like Tosh's episode of Series 1, where she kind of falls in love with this alien woman. And it's not the greatest of episodes. You might want to check it out, but who's like some sort of... It's all complicated, I remember. I haven't seen it in a couple of years, but... Yeah, so that's another nice reference there as well. There's quite a few references in these two parts to various alien races, previous episodes, just little nods, so that's always a nice thing to add in the episode, so it's just another moment there. And we get to one of what I think is fairly major sort of scene, the Doctor and Clara when they're talking on the phone, and we really see that Clara can't cope. She can't bear to think of losing the Doctor, and that sort of selfishness that she has there, that she just he can't cope without him being there. He wants him to be there for her all the time, and it really showed her vulnerability, and probably was magnified by the loss of her mum, and then Danny, and also, as I mentioned last week, I believe her grand possibly as well. Maybe I made that up. Still haven't checked that. Really should. So yeah, you can there's kind of an explanation to why she is like that, but it's one of the clearest moments we get where we really see that she can't cope. The Doctor is everything to her. She's got although she has this teaching job and this sort of slightly sort of a part of another life, she doesn't want that life really. She just does it to fill time as much as anything else, just because she has to. And so she, as far as she's concerned, she is going to stay with him until she dies, pretty much, like Rose pretty much wanted to back in series 2. How long are you going to stay with me? Forever. that cheesy moment there. But and I think that's a similar situation with Clara, that she just, after series 8 and after all losing Danny and everything, the Doctor's the only thing she's got left that she loves to do anymore, really. So I think that's why she really showed that pain of being unable to cope with losing the Doctor, or even that thought. And that's why she looked a little sort of selfish and mean as a character in that point, just because she needs him so much, really. And so that was some great character moments there between the two of them. Even if it's just over the phone, it was really gives you an insight into their relationship, which I thought was a really nice. This episode obviously had that scene with the duty of care in the first part, and so although Clara in this series isn't that well used until the last 3 episodes, the Doctor and Clara do still have some really nice moments in it, which further the character sort of development and progression through the series, which I think is really one of the strongest parts of this series is the character development and the character arcs and stuff. So that's all really well done. And so, of course, around this we have the Doctor's ghost. Quite a nice moment. The Doctor trying to talk to his ghost, makes a few jokes about how his ghost and stuff. And of course, he doesn't know anything about what it actually is and everything. And it's all timey-wimey, and the whole concept really is, as the 10th Doctor would tell you, and the 11th. Has the 12th said timey-wimey yet? I don't think so. Obviously, Santa said dreamy-wimey in Last Christmas, but I don't think the Doctor's actually said. Hopefully he won't, because he shouldn't say that phrase. That doesn't fit with his Doctor. So no. Yeah. So you get that Doctor's ghost, and then that list of names that they reel off, that the ghost reels off, which kind of furthers the story, and kind of you feel like, because of course that list of names is telling us that O'Donnell's going to die, and the Doctor's pretty brutal at this point in terms of letting O'Donnell die to test his theory, essentially. It's kind of like the Mummy on the Orient Express, where he was just getting people killed to test out his ideas and his theories and stuff, which is pretty brutal, you have to say. And so obviously he sticks Clara next, and he's never going to let Clara die, so he had to do something about it then. But it was interesting, and Bennett was right to be really angry and with him, clearly, because he was in love with her as well, which added another dimension to it, which I thought was an alright extra sort of dimension to add to their characters' relationship. But yeah, so we had a bit of, I'd say, more Series 8 style Doctor being really, although he maybe wasn't so sort of serious and harsh on it in the words that he used and the way that he acted, the actual act that he did of just letting O'Donnell die without really trying very hard to stop her leaving the TARDIS, of course. It sort of, yeah, it was very much harking back to his Series 8 personality a bit more there, I think, which kind of does a good job to link up his character, because although he's quite different in Series 9 to Series 8, he's still the same Doctor, he's still the 12th Doctor, and so he shouldn't be completely different and completely removed from the character that he was in Series 8, which I've seen is a criticism from some people that he's maybe a little bit too far removed. But I think that scene sort of shows that really he's not. He's still pretty clinical, pretty brutal in the way that he solves stuff sometimes. Maybe he doesn't do it as often and doesn't show it as clearly in his anger and the way he talks, but he still does these things, which maybe 11 or 10 wouldn't have done. Certainly, I don't think 11 would have done that. Matt wouldn't have done that, I don't think. And so it's nice to have that different, to have a Doctor who's different to the previous ones, but to keep the consistency through the series where it could be lost a bit. And also, this episode, this two-parter, was the first episode of Series 9 to be filmed back in January 2015, which is such a long time ago now. But yeah, these there must have been a fun time filming out in that in the Russian base in Scotland, where it was probably about mid-January and probably about -3 or something. So that must have been a fun time to be out there recording or filming all this Doctor Who. But I guess we'd all love to be filming Doctor Who, wouldn't we? We'd love to be in it, really. So wouldn't be complaining too much. But yeah, these were the first episodes filmed, obviously, which could I'd say they were probably some of the first scripts to come in, because I remember from way back, Stephen Moffat was talking about there being a ghost story in Series 9. I think it was from early 2014, while they were mid-filming Series 8, he was already talking about a ghost story for Series 9. So I imagine that these were probably the first scripts to come in for Series 9, I would say. And so that might be why the Doctor's character, to some degree, is slightly more written Series 8 style than the Series 9 style, if you like. And so that could sort of link to why. And obviously the Doctor's got shorter hair here than he does in The Magician's Apprentice and The Witch's Familiar. Obviously you're just not meant to notice that. It's just because he must have had a haircut between The Witch's Familiar and Under the Lake, is what we have to assume. But actually it's just because they were filmed first, and so his hair kept on growing in length. And then does it get shorter in The Girl Who Died or longer? I can't remember. I'll have to watch it again. When we watch it again, I'll find out. But yeah, it's not a bit of a tangent here, isn't it? Yet again, discussing the Doctor's hair and filming times and stuff. But yeah, so O'Donnell's death was a pretty brutal act for the Doctor, and a sad moment for Bennett. It was kind of, although O'Donnell's death was kind of, she just sort of turns round, sees the Fisher King, freezes and gets killed. Wouldn't she even try running at that point? It seems slightly strange that she just completely froze, because clearly the Fisher King wasn't like there at her face. He was a fair way away, and so you think she could have turned around and run as soon as she saw that shadow, rather than dramatic slow turning. Oh no, it's the Fisher King! I suddenly can't move and I'm going to be killed. It wasn't the greatest of deaths in the actual practical sense of it. It was a nice moment with Bennett and O'Donnell after, but the practical moment of that was not the best execution we've ever seen. So, but we got rid of a character, made the Doctor speed things up, if you like, a bit, and having to actually save Clara now because she's next on the list. Although then we find out it was just a random list, or was it not? Oh dear, it gets complicated, doesn't it? Well, we'll come to that at the end. One of the nice moments which it's just a moment in Doctor Who and sci-fi in general which I love, is when you get the when the TARDIS, they go back in time 30 minutes, or by accident 30 minutes, and the Doctor wants to go back to the base, and then you end up with the two TARDISes and the two sets of them, one sort of over there and one just here. And obviously they did that on Father's Day as well back in Series 1, and I just really like those moments when you end up crossing over each other's timelines and you have to avoid yourself and this kind of stuff. It's one of my favourite kind of ideas and the way they do things in sci-fi in general, and in Doctor Who in particular. It's hard to pinpoint exactly why, but I just really love the way that when you have that sort of, you've got the same character at different times in the same place, and they have to avoid each other. And yeah, that's just sort of a bit of sci-fi that I really like. It obviously shows, as with this whole episode, that Toby Whithouse can do complicated, timey-wimey stuff, which has only previously really seen Moffat do. I mean, RTD was very much straightforward sci-fi. Well, as I've seen lots of people say, RTD isn't a sci-fi writer really. He's more of a sort of comedy/drama writer than, or maybe not comedy, but a proper sort of TV drama writer rather than a sci-fi writer. So that's maybe where some of his sci-fi concepts and plots are a bit simpler and less convoluted, whereas Moffat is very much sci-fi and comedy writer, and so he goes to a lot more depth with the complex sort of playing with time ideas, and it was nice to see Toby Whithouse take this on and do this a bit in this episode, which elevated it a bit for me, because I really like that sort of way of doing things. Why I like the Moffat era so much is because I like it when they're playing with time a bit more and really taking advantage of the fact this is a show with a time machine and all about time travel. The time travel shouldn't just be used to get to a place to start off the episodes. You should actually make use of the time travel elements of it, and the fact you've got a time machine and incorporate that into the stories. And I don't think they do that enough. They just use it as a plot device to get from one place to another. It's not really actually explored that often. So that's what I really like them doing, and this episode obviously does it quite well. Now, one of the other main developments of Clara's character in this episode is we really see her starting to become like the Doctor. Obviously, we had that in Series 8 as well, with all the I'm the Doctor and stuff. And we see that even more a bit here, where with Cass and Lun in the Faraday cage, where she sends out Lun, and it was the sort of thing that the Doctor does, and Cass picks up on that by saying, "Oh, have you been changed by the Doctor, or do you normally just send people out to risk their own lives and this kind of stuff?" So it really sort of showed that other people were seeing now that she really is becoming like the Doctor a lot more, ever more become like the Doctor, and we see that even more in The Girl Who Died, obviously, next week when I review that. But in this episode, yeah, she's sort of continuing on from somewhat what we had in Series 8, mainly Flatline it was, where she was becoming like the Doctor, mainly because they needed to say it was meant to be a sort of Doctor Light episode, wasn't it, with the Doctor trapped in the TARDIS, so that's why it became Clara Who, as everybody hates to call it, or most people. I thought it was alright. It wasn't too bad, and obviously they purposely poked at it in Death and Heaven with Clara's eyes in the title sequence, and that is the other bit where the opening of Death and Heaven, when she pretends to be the Doctor rather than an actual character development. She just pretends to be the Doctor to try and escape the situation. And so that's less of her actually trying to be like the Doctor, whereas in this episode she does really have more and more Doctor-like tendencies and characteristics to her. They're sort of rubbing off onto her because she's been around him so long and has done so many adventures, so many risks and this kind of stuff, and it really sort of starting to show properly, which I don't think with any of the other companions were really seen to that same degree of them coming like the Doctor. Rose obviously loved the Doctor and stuff, but she was never wanted to be like him, really. She just wanted to be with him all the time. And Martha and Donna's very much a different story, and Amy, no. So this was the first time I think that's probably to some degree why a lot of people don't like a character, because she was becoming so sort of intelligent and supposedly the perfect sort of character and companion that people didn't like that you could have a character who's not a Time Lord or anything like the Doctor, but could become so similar and so much like the Doctor. And so I think that might be where some of the criticisms come from for Clara's character. Of course, there's also the criticisms about writing of her character and this kind of stuff, which I might do a video on that somewhen, about defending Clara's character, because I think she's a great character. She's probably my favourite companion of Doctor Who, full stop, I would say. That's quite a bold statement, but I think it's probably true. And so, yeah, at some point I might do a video on that, actually, because I think it's worthwhile, because a lot of people just don't like a character, and I think there's a lot of unfounded criticism for her character. And I'd recommend, if you haven't read them before, to go to the website Doctor Who TV. If you go back a few weeks through their articles, there's a person on there, I can't remember their actual name, that's really bad, but their account name's The Lazy Cat, and they're like huge Clara fan, and they've written loads of detailed articles on Clara's character through each of the series 7, 8 and 9, explaining how she is such a great character and how all the things that have happened to her make sense, and how she is well written, and just sort of everything links up together as well. And it's I think it's a 5-part article. It's a really long one. It'll take you like an hour and a half to actually read it all through, I'd imagine. But it is really worthwhile if you're a bit critical of Clara's character. It's worthwhile to have a read through those to see if that changes your opinion, because they really are fantastic articles that explain everything good about her character and how she is written well. So I think if I can find them, I'll put the links to the articles in the description to this video. I apologise, I can't remember the name of the person who actually wrote it. It says it at the top of the article, so is it Ruth Long, possibly? Well, yeah, you'll see it when you read it, and if you want to read it. But it's really worthwhile checking it out, so because it just gives great insight. So, yeah, that's pretty much all to say on this part with Clara's becoming like the Doctor, which is what she wanted through the series, and, well, it bites her in a big way, kind of, and then doesn't at the end of the series, but that's for another video, isn't it? And so, about 25 minutes into the second part of the story, we finally get the actual villain of the whole story, the Fisher King. This giant like 7 foot tall alien sort of fish out of water almost kind of. It's really hard to describe him as a character. He's tall. We'll just stick with that pretty much. And well, this is probably my number one criticism of this episode, is that he is woefully underused, terribly underused this episode, because him and the Doctor in that sort of churchy building, they have a chat for about 6 or 7 minutes, then he walks out, looks in the ship, walks down, and gets wiped out by the water. He does nothing. He just has a chat with the Doctor for 5 minutes and then gets drowned. That's literally it. And so that's really poor, and one of the main sort of reasons why this episode doesn't rate as highly as it could have done. If you like, as highly as Witch Familiar, Mission Apprentice, probably even slightly lower than Under the Lake, just because this is meant to be the main villain. He's a new alien. He's an interesting character. He knows about the Time Lords and this kind of stuff, so clearly he's clued up, interesting, tool, new, nice big weapon. And he doesn't kill. We don't see him kill anyone. He kills Prentice, but we don't even see that. I mean, that's how Doctor Who works these days. You can't have any blood, can you? I mean, when O'Donnell died, there was no blood, nothing. We couldn't have had something to make it look like she was actually dying. She just went, and there's nothing, no wound, no blood, no nothing. Do a bit more of that. Yes, it's going to be a kids show, but it does. You can have blood for kids. Come on. Let's just up it a bit. We need. I mean, look at the Doctor. You did it in Heaven Sent when the Doctor's all bloodied over face and it looked pretty grim and horrific, but that's what you want to see. So you need to give it more of that in Doctor Who generally. But anyway, the Fisher King, great character, terribly used, is about all you can say on it really. They do work it well. I will give them credit for the slow reveal of him. It's in, again, as I said before, in classic Doctor Who style of just revealing the alien in stages like they used to do in a lot of the classic serials. I mean, the arc in space is kind of a peak of that, where you get, at each of the cliffhangers, you get a little bit more of the alien. I mean, the first cliffhanger, you get the, like, dead one, I think, and then you get the sort of green bubble wrap arm. Yes, it's bubble wrap, that's depressing. And then you get the sort of wormy creature, and at the end you get the full-formed Wern, I think it is, the Wern, something like that. And that's sort of the template of how to reveal a Doctor Monster. Obviously, this is a very different way of storytelling with 4 parts, 25-minute episodes, and it's in the 1970s. But I think that is a good way to do it, and is kind of how they aim to do it in this episode, where we hear the roaring first, and then the stomping. We just get the silhouettes of it, the shadows, and it's not until they're confronted with him with the Doctor in this church area that we actually see him in full. But then we don't get any of it. We sort of needed that to happen at the end of part 1. And clearly it wouldn't have worked as a story in that way, because you've got... Yeah, it's a difficult one. It's very hard to sort of fit the Fisher King into this story and to still have this sort of a story, I think, because you want that first episode to be purely under the lake, if you like, and in that underwater base. And then you want the second part to be all the Russian sort of military base of how it was before the flood. And unless you cut sort of half of the under the lake stuff off and start the sort of before the flood bit about 25 minutes into part 1, and then have the cliffhanger maybe of the Fisher King reveal, that's about the only way you can actually get the Fisher King to have lots of screen time. So although it's a major criticism of the episode, it's hard to see how you can make this episode sort of as a story work and have the Fisher King in a big role. So that's, yeah, it's a difficult one, and I think, although it is a fair criticism, I think, of this episode, it's hard to see what else can be done. So there you go, Fisher King. And of course, while all this stuff is going on with the Doctor and the Fisher King having a little chinwag, we get Cass and Clara having to go out and help Lun, because Cass is worried about Lun, even though she doesn't need to be, just because, well, they're in love, so she had to be worried, didn't she? So she goes out there, and we get her epic moment where she is being followed by Moran with the old hammery thing, and sort of using the vibrations of the floor to sort of work out that he's behind him and to duck out of the way at the right moment. Although I feel like she could have just turned around. If she'd felt maybe there might be something there, why didn't she just turn around in the first place and have a look, rather than... Because he didn't look like he was going to move any quicker, did he? He wasn't like in a rush. So then she could have started running or something. I know clearly it was to add to the drama and to improve her as a character, making her look like, oh, she can cope on her own. She's this epic her deafness isn't going to harm the character or anything like this, and she's using that as an advantage kind of thing. But yeah, it seems slightly unnecessary to actually do that. But it was a great moment in terms of the sort of representation of deaf characters, well, in television in general and Doctor Who, to show that you can take advantage of that because you develop your other senses more, obviously. And so you have to use the vibrations of the floor to sort of build up a mental picture of what's going on around you. So yeah, that was a really nice moment there. And showing Cass to be written as, again, as a really strong female character despite her disability, which I mentioned last week, really is great to see in Doctor Who. And so we come to the final sort of 10 minutes or so where it really starts to get rather complicated, where we get sort of this rush of explanations for everything that's happened in the two parts in quick succession. You sort of have to watch it a couple of times and sit down and think about it to really take in every explanation and understand exactly what happened. So I'm going to attempt to run you through the last 10 minutes and cover every explanation to check that we all understand exactly what happened at the end of that episode. So, what we get first is the Doctor and the Fisher King, where the Doctor says, this is where your story ends, and this kind of stuff. And he says, oh, I've erased the writing from the ship or something like that. And it's over because I've erased that writing, and they're never going to be transmitting, and they're never going to be able to, the coordinates are not going to be detected and this kind of stuff. So they're never going to be able to home in on them because those words are coordinates, wasn't it? For the, like, Fisher King race, if they're called that, I don't know, to home in on there and come back. And so obviously then the Fisher King goes out to have a little check up on that, check all the Doctor's not lying, and it turns out, yes, he's lying. And then the Fisher King steps out of the spaceship and gets drowned and destroyed. And that's how the flood started, of course. And that's why the base was flooded. The Doctor caused the base to be flooded. And that's why the power cell isn't there in the first episode, because the Doctor's used that power cell to blow up the dam. I'm not sure when he actually put it in. Maybe it's because he's... Right. When he says, now I'm ready, it's because he set up his plan. He's obviously gone and planted that that device, whatever it's called, power cell or something, to explode. He's got it all set up, which is why he says, now I'm ready, because I've got all my plans set up. And then he walks in, knowing he's going to win already. And so it's a pretty chilled moment. And so yeah, then the Fisher King's gone. And then suddenly, bam, we cut back to the base. They're all about to be trapped by the ghosts. And then the Doctor appears out of the suspended animation chamber, as we all predicted he would. He jumps up out and saves the day in a matter of moments. And because of course then you get the Doctor's sonic sunglasses, which projects the sound of the Fisher King's scream into the Doctor ghost, who's in the Faraday cage, which then takes all the ghosts into the Faraday cage, traps them in there. That all makes fairly perfect sense. And then so then there is all save the day, and we finally continue with the explanations. Is that the Doctor's ghost is just a projection, a hologram sort of projection from the what's the word, sonic sunglasses. He just sort of made, and that list. Hang on, I'll come to that in a second. But yeah, so the Doctor's ghost was just sort of a holographic projection there, which was to kind of help the Doctor. See, this is where it all gets confusing, isn't it? Because there's a projection of the Doctor to help the Doctor to do what he needs to get back there and remove... Oh, it's so complicated. It's the bootstrap paradox, essentially, isn't it? Of sort of, well, who composed Beethoven's Fifth. But yeah, and we find out that the other ghosts are like electromagnetic projections or something, which is why they don't come out at night, because they don't come out in the day, because of something related to electromagnetic stuff. I'm not an expert. And so we get that explanation. So they're not really proper ghosts. They're not ghosts, as they couldn't be ghosts, so they're not ghosts. And yeah, well, that's sort of, well, there's one last bit of explanation we'll come to in a minute. You get the nice moment with Cass and Lun having a snog, and Cass looking a bit sheepish about it all. And that's a nice moment to end on, because clearly they're the best of friends, and we find out that they're more than friends, as are Bennett and O'Donnell. But Bennett was a bit late, wasn't he? Bit late asking her out, and he didn't pan out very well. So you wonder what he's up to now. Because he's part of, was he part of, he's not part of unit, he's some sort of sciencey person, isn't he? So who knows what he did next. But, and then we get to that final scene in the TARDIS with the final explanations where he kind of explains that, oh, I created the ghost to help me, and obviously I put that list in to prompt myself so that I would save you. And then he says, but no, I didn't. They were just all random words. But actually, did they? And then he gets, when did I first have those ideas? And there's no answer to that question, when did he first have those ideas? Because it's an endless loop, the bootstrap paradox in action. It's an endless loop of the Doctor's doing what his ghost has told him, but he's programming his ghost to say that, and so the ghost telling him, and he's responding to that, and it's just a constant loop that gets extremely confusing in a bootstrap paradox. And yeah, it's and of course we get the who really composed Beethoven's Fifth. Well, in that situation, there is no answer. Essentially, there is no answer to how. This is where it could frustrate people. Is there's no answer to how the Doctor sort of worked things out and solved it, because there's no explanation to the whole Doctor's ghost and the messages and all this kind of stuff. The chamber is open. Wasn't that a reference to he needed to get into the chamber or something? And this so yeah, it's a complex story with, if you think about it too much, you have to think about it to get it, is the biggest thing of it. Doctor Who this isn't simple Doctor Who. It's not just easy fun, you sit there, it's a simple, all the aliens blow up at the end, they just put a bomb in, they all blow up, that's happy days, the end. It's not like that, it's complicated. You've got to sit down, you've got to think about it to really understand it, and that can be enjoyable, that can be good, to really have to think about an episode rather than just being too simple and a bit boring. This is making you think a bit more, but clearly once you delve into it, there is no answer, essentially, to how the Doctor's sort of ghost was programmed to say that, and how the Doctor responded to all this. And so yeah, it's a good story. It's complicated, but it's a really good story as far as I'm concerned. Well, there we go. I hope I've done somewhat of a good job of explaining the plot of this story and how the explanations actually come together. I mean, what I would recommend is just watch it again if you can't remember or you don't understand, because there is a lot of explanation there. Then maybe Google a few articles, I had to do that, of sort of reviews of them and explanations of Before the Flood, because there was one I saw which did give a really good, I can't remember what it was called, might put the link if I find it, that was a really good explanation of how it all worked out and how there is no actual answer to when did I first have these ideas, because there's an endless loop of nothing really of who actually had the ideas first. So yeah, that's Before the Flood pretty much. Not much else to say on it. I thought it was really fairly enjoyable. It was about how I thought, which was just below an 8 with this one. Now I think it does sit slightly below Under the Lake now, because, well, initially, of course, I said last week I thought Under the Lake was too sort of conventional and standard, but actually I think it's really good. And although this is a bit more of a complex experimental episode, I think it works really well, but not quite as well as just the classic story, I think, which is where I sort of had the opposite opinion when I watched them the first time round. But now my opinion's changed, and who knows, next time it might change again. You never really know. That's just how it works with opinions on your favourite programmes and episodes and TV shows. So I gave it 7.9 out of 10. Just not quite an 8, which I gave to Under the Lake, but a very solid story. I'd ran it up to an 8 out of 10 for the two-parter as a whole. Clearly, Magician's Apprentice was about an 8, which for me was an 8.7 average, so it's not up there with that, but it's a great, continuing consistent start to the series. And I made the comment around the time on Doctor Who TV's sort of comment section that, in my opinion, this was the 5 episodes from Last Christmas up to this were the most consistently good run of 5 episodes that we've had since series 5/6 of Pandorica Opens Big Bang, Christmas Carol, Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon. And I don't think we've had a 5-episode run as consistently good as that. Well, this run wasn't as consistently as good anything since those episodes in 2010/11. Don't think there's anything as good as that. And obviously they were all written by Moffat, and 3 of these were written by Moffat, so clearly Moffat writes good stories. But yeah, so I thought that was, and then there wasn't a 5-episode period through the rest of the series, so that's definitely the sort of best run of 5 episodes that we've had since 2010, really, 2010-11. So it really shows how good this series was and how it started off well and finished well and was good in the middle as well. So, well, we've still got all that to come. Another 9 episodes with the Christmas special. Lots more to come. And, well, I'll be continuing this time next week, hopefully, with my review of The Girl Who Died, with I'm the Doctor and I Save People, as the poster says up there. I'm the Doctor and I Save People. One of my favourite posters I got there. Looks lovely. And, yeah, so we come into that episode next week. The whole explanation of Capaldi being in Doctor Who before. Doesn't give a Torchwood explanation, but that's all for next week. So, I hope you enjoyed this review of Before the Flood. Follow me on Twitter for all my ramblings of Doctor Who and, well, other stuff as well, but a lot of Doctor Who stuff on there, and updates on when my videos coming up and all this kind of stuff. Like this video, subscribe if you're new here. I'm getting really close to 900 subscribers right now, or I might have them by the time you watch the video. And I'm also considering, if and when I get to 1,000 subscribers, doing a 1K Q&A. Nice bit of rhyming there. So, well, I'll do a video about that closer to the time, but I'll be wanting your questions around then. Not yet, don't post to me yet. It's a bit early. I don't think I'll be getting to 1,000 subscribers just yet, because it's taken quite some time to get 800 to 900, and it's been a good 2-3 months. So, but the Series 9 soundtrack might push it up. Well, anyway, subscribe if you're new here, like the video, and I'll see you next week for my review of The Girl Who Died. Bye!